Hello, hello. Thank you for joining us today. This is Leo with One Happy Widow, and it has been a while since I posted a video live or otherwise. So I've actually recorded a couple and just have not gotten back to editing, uploading, and all that kind of stuff. So live seems to be a little better for me because I get on there, I say what I need to say, and when I'm done, it just uploads automatically. So today we're going to do a live. And like I'm in the in between hair phase right now, trying to grow my hair out, trying to grow the color out and the style out. And it's at that point where I just don't know what to do with it. And I'm hating it kind of these days. And so I'm going to give it through summer vacation. And if I can't take it anymore, I'm chopping it back off right before school goes back into session. So this is what it is. You get what you get. It's all about the message anyway, right? Okay, so it looks like we've got Laurie here from Texas, and she's my name buddy because my legal name is actually Laurie, and it's spelled the same way and everything. So thank you for joining. If you're here, go ahead and post in the chat where you're from if you'd like to do that. If you're watching in the replay, then I will have a couple of links down below that I'm about to talk about, and I put them in the chat also. If you are here for the first time and you're just hearing about us, thank you so much for joining and welcome. I do have a couple of resources that I wanted to share with you. The first one is the Grief Pivot course, which is still available, always out there. It's for people who are past that initial stage of grief and kind of in that transition phase where they're trying to figure out how to navigate life and how to figure out what this new normal is. And so it's kind of a way for you to pivot from grief to growth, and chock full of ideas about changing your mindset and how to kind of develop new routines and ways to think different ways. And so that is www.griefpivotcourse.com. So you can go there and check that out. Also, if you are not already in our Facebook group, we have an awesome Facebook group that is full of supportive members. It's a very loving, accepting space, lots of support, lots of positivity. And so it's just an awesome place to be. I really love that group. And even when I'm not able to pop in as often as I'd like to, we have some really good members that are there to kind of help answer questions, help give support, and just kind of help motivate people when they're having a tough time. So they come in and let us know what's going on. And so that one is, the link is there on the chat. It's also down below. It's the same name as the site, One Happy Widow. So you can search for that. It does take me a little bit longer to get people approved. So I've just been approving members today. We had like 73 people waiting to be approved. And so I'm down. I think I got about half of those people entered in. And so I've got to do the other half today. So that's where we are. Today, we're going to talk about grief triggers. And I feel like it's been a topic it's really been hitting me a lot in the last few weeks. It just seems like I've been triggered a lot lately by several different things. And so I know if it's affecting me, then it's probably affecting some people out there. So usually whenever I'm struggling with something, or whenever I am just kind of dealing with something that's grief related in my life, I usually use that as my next topic, because I know if it's something I'm dealing with, there's probably people out there that are trying to deal with it too. And so I don't claim to be an expert to be able to tell everybody how to live their lives or how to solve all of your problems. But I can just let you know that I'm going through a lot of the same things that you guys are going through, and I can share what I'm going through, how it's affected me. Also give you some things, some ideas of maybe ways of things that have helped me. Might not help everybody, but sometimes it's just nice to hear from someone, to know that, well, she's going through it too. So at least I'm not the only one out there. Sometimes it just helps to know that you're not the only one, and to hear somebody else talk about something similar to what you're struggling through. And also, it's kind of nice to hear from someone who has been through the same things that you're going through, because sometimes we try to find resources, or we try to go to therapists, or we try to watch videos or read articles and things like that. And it's maybe written by people who haven't necessarily felt the same type of loss that we have, and it's really hard to give weight to any of that because when somebody's giving you advice on something, they have no idea what they're talking about. Even if it's good advice, it's just hard. It's hard to accept from someone who in your mind you're like, "Well, how do you even know? You've never even walked through my shoes before. You have no idea, what you're talking about." And they might know what they're talking about, but it just kind of helps to hear it from somebody who's traveling along that same path that you are. And so we've got Tammy from Mississippi. We've got Kathleen from North Carolina. We've got Barb from Canada. My mother and grandparents are actually from Canada. So my mom is Canadian. So I'm half Canadian. And although I've never been there myself, probably don't want to. I live in the southeastern United States. I live in Georgia and probably will never move from here because I'm too attached to the warm weather. But speaking of warm weather, it is supposed to be spring. And here we are, March 19th, celebrating this week was the 30-year anniversary of what we call the blizzard of 93. It was like the worst snowstorm that we've ever had in Georgia. And it happened in 1993. I was in college at the time. It's kind of dating me and aging me, but I do remember because we were stuck in our dorms and snow everywhere, trees breaking and icicles falling and roofs caving in and no power. And, in the South, we're not prepared for those kind of snow and freezes. And so when that kind of stuff happens, we don't have snow chains and we don't have snow plows and we don't have salt trucks and we don't have all those things, to put in place to protect ourselves from that kind of weather. And tonight we got a freeze warning. It's supposed to get down to like 23 tonight. And tomorrow it's supposed to get down to, I don't know, 26. And so I'm like, where's the spring weather, guys? We got to bring our dogs in at night because it's too cold for them to stay outside. And so I'm ready for warm weather. In 2 weeks, we're having spring break. So I'm wanting the weather to be kind of nice for spring break. Christian's here from Indiana. So we've got people kind of from all over. And very nice to have everybody here. Thank you for joining. So I want to talk about these grief triggers. I know that in the beginning, when you're in fresh grief, it seems like everything is a trigger. Everything reminds you of your spouse because you have lived with your spouse or your loved one for however long you've lived with them, and that's your daily routine. So you are so far out of your daily routine that it's a big change for you to be living without them, to be figuring out how to navigate day to day without them. You're also probably, if you're in really, really fresh grief, you're also probably thinking, your brain is trying to wrap itself around the idea that they're actually not there anymore. Like it almost doesn't seem real a lot of the times in the beginning. And so you're trying to figure out how to accept it, how to realize it's really real. You're probably in a lot of denial. Your heart and your head takes a long time to kind of connect together and be in the same place where you're ready to accept that they're gone and also accept that this is your life now and that you have to figure out how to live it. It's not something we want to do, but it is something that we have to do because this is the reality and it's what it's where we are. So at that time, it seems like everything triggers you. I can remember being triggered by by smells around. I got a little list. I'm reading off my list. I can what does this say? Oh, it said house, and I'm looking at it. I thought it said horse. I'm like, we never had a horse, and why is a horse triggering me? So I don't have my glasses on. Okay, house. So everything in the house, right? It takes a while to get rid of all their stuff, and it's hard to decide what to get rid of and what to keep, and you can't keep everything, and you have to kind of go through in phases and get rid of some things, and then you hold on to some others, and then a little later you get rid of some other things, and then sometimes there's things that you just you just seem to not be able to ever let go of. And some things you don't ever want to get rid of, and that's okay too. But it's, since there's so many things in the house around you to remind you of their presence, you're getting triggered or reminded all the time. I can remember, our closet that we shared, it was one side was his stuff and one side was my stuff. And a lot of people leave their closet stuff the same for a while because it just hurts too much to go through the process of getting rid of their things. Everybody's different, okay? So there's no right or wrong way to know when you're supposed to do those things. So if you're holding on to that stuff for a while, that's fine. If that's where you need to be. If you get rid of it a little sooner, that's fine too. Everybody's different, okay? So I'm not telling you what to do in what order. I'm just telling you what I did and why. But in the beginning, I can remember every time I went to the closet, which was every day, so that I could get dressed, I was looking at his stuff, all of his clothes that were hanging there and his shoes, and it just reminded me, it was a reminder, it was like a dagger in my heart every time I walked into that closet because I knew he would never be putting those clothes on again. He would never be wearing those shoes again, and it hurt me so bad to see that every single day. I could not do it, and so it didn't take very long. It took me, I don't know, a week or 2, and I just had to get rid of all of his clothes. Now, I did keep a few things that I knew for mementos, like I kept his military uniform because I knew that one of the kids might want it at some point. That includes his top, his shoes, his boots, his he was a drill sergeant, so drill sergeant hat, and so I kept his uniform. He was also a basketball referee for like the rec and some local schools and stuff. He had a couple of referee shirts, so I kept his referee shirts, thinking, on down the road the kids might want to have those. And he had a couple of like a shirt that he had gotten when he was in high school, that kind of thing. But as far as like just regular stuff, jeans and shirts and stuff that he wore every day and shoes, just I just got rid of it all. I sent it to Goodwill, and I had to do that in order to like just not be in that painful place every day because that was triggering me. And about 2 weeks in, I guess, his mom came back to the house and she's like, "Yeah, I'll be taking all of his clothes off of your hands, his underwear and everything." She wanted his underwear, his socks, all of his stuff. Well, first of all, I threw away his underwear and socks. I did not send that to Goodwill. And I thought, why in the hell would she want his underwear? Like, but that's her version of grief, I guess. But I just, thought it was kind of silly. But anyway, I told her when she came, I was like, well, I don't have any of that stuff anymore. I got rid of it. She was very upset. How could you do that? And she was, I don't know if it was more hurt or just more. If you've watched any of my videos, you know that his mom and I had a time. Okay. We still are having a time. Okay. So that's a whole set of videos in itself that I won't get into. But anyway, she wanted his stuff and I had gotten rid of it and she got mad. But anyway, his car, um, this funny thing was the car that I drove, which was my car, if you want to call it that, was in his name because he bought it for me, but it was my car. The car that he drove was his car, was in my name because at the time that we bought it, I was the only one that was able to get a loan for it or whatever. Um, so I had to let my car go because it was in his name and I couldn't afford both payments, but I just couldn't bear to continue to drive his car because it was his car and I never drove it. And so I ended up letting that go too, because it was just too much of a trigger for me. Also, I've talked about this in several videos, but my travel to work every day, for some reason, when I was going to work, I was driving the same path and I would get to a certain stop sign. And for some reason, some memories would come back to me about, just memories of him. And right past that stop sign was an elementary school where our youngest daughter had played basketball. That's where their gym was and where they play basketball. And he had refereed a bunch of games there. He had even refereed a couple of her games. And he had said that the following year, he's like, "I'm not going to referee next year because I want to coach Dallas's team." Um, and she was 7 at the time, so he wanted to be her coach the next year. And so every time I went to work, I drove past that school with that gym, and the thought would come into my head that he's never gonna be able to watch her play basketball in that gym again. He's never gonna be able to be her coach in that gym or anywhere again. And so every time I passed that gym, which was every day on the way to work, that thought entered my mind. And I couldn't stop the trigger from happening because I kept driving past it every day. And it was like, how do you not think that thought that keeps coming in every day when you see the same school every day? So I started having to take the long way to work so that I wouldn't drive past that school every day. And by the time I got to work every day, I was crying in the car. So I'd have to sit, have my little cry in the car, clean myself up, try not to look too puffy-eyed and stuff so I could be presentable to walk into work every day. And so that was like a daily trigger for me. And so, and again, I talked about this in another video, but I ended up having to take another job. I couldn't drive to work, look at the same people. I felt like in my mind that everybody was looking at me because they knew me before when I was married, and then they knew me while I was working there through his illness. And then summertime came, and then I came back to work, and I was the widow. And so they probably weren't thinking that, but I felt like every time I saw somebody that they were looking at me like, oh, that's the woman whose husband died. And I felt like they just didn't know how to talk to me anymore. And they didn't want to, interact with me the same way anymore because they're like, oh, that poor lady. And they just didn't know what to say. So a lot of them didn't say a whole lot. I didn't fit in anywhere because, I was relatively young. I didn't know anybody else there who had been widowed. And so that was a trigger for me. And so that whole situation had to be changed because I just couldn't, I felt like I couldn't move forward as long as I was in that same situation every single day. So I did end up taking another job. It took me another year. Like I worked there the whole school year, but I ended up, I asked him if I could go part-time because I was also just overwhelmed with work and single parenting and all that. But, or solo parenting actually, but they didn't have a part-time position for me. So I went somewhere else that had a part-time position. So anyway, um, so songs on the radio was a big trigger. So, there was a R song that would come on the radio, or um, when Dewey went to Iraq, it was in 2003. And so, I don't know why I have this red mark on my neck. I don't know what happened there, but I think I scratched it. Anyway, in 2003, he had gone to Iraq. And at that time, there was a music group that was out that he had the whole album for, and it was Three Doors Down. If you guys listen to any kind of pop music, you would probably recognize Three Doors Down. And they had a lot of songs that were written that were, the topic was kind of like people being separated and people away from each other. And so he listened to it a lot. It became his favorite album because he listened to it a lot because he was away from his family. And one song was Being Without You, was talking about being without you and how he missed his love and all that. And so it was a lot of topics about being separated from us while he was in the desert. But whenever I heard those songs come on the radio, it reminded me of being separated from him for life and for eternity, and so it triggered me a lot, and I would have to turn it off. So now, of course, they're old songs now, but when I do hear those songs come on the radio now, I just kind of give a little smile, and I just figure that's like a little way of him, just reminding me and maybe trying to give me a message, just kind of let me know. I always just kind of think about him and say, yep, I hear you. And, so, and then a lot of his stuff, just a lot of his stuff that I had was just, it was just triggering. And so, I ended up getting rid of, most of his things. And cause he was a little bit of a hoarder. And so, I had to get rid of a lot of stuff because it was stuff that I didn't need, stuff that were like part of his little hobbies and things that he liked to collect. And so it was just overwhelming. And so I had to get rid of all that. I'm going to go back to the chat box and just see if anybody else has some, some chats about triggers and things early on. So Janet is from Pennsylvania. She says, hello. Jane says, hi, Leo. Hi, WID fams. Dark, rainy evening here, but lots of love and blessings from London, UK. Okay. Janet says, strange trigger last week. A Sousa match came on the radio in the car, broke out in tears. My dad, who died 30 years ago, loved those marches. It really blindsided me. So unexpected. Yeah, because that's, not like mainstream music. So it must have been something kind of different for you. So, smells and sounds, smells and music, I think smells probably primarily are huge triggers for memories. And so when you smell something, like you can smell something from your, like from your elementary school, some kind of smell like a crayon smell, or, the smell of your school hallways and the wax that they use to clean the schools or something like that. it will take you right back there to that moment. So smells are very triggering for memories. Um, Janet says, emotions are just under the surface all the time. Husband died 20 months ago. Yes. And Peg's here. Hello, everyone. So as Janet says, that yeah, the emotions are just kind of like they sort of are just kind of always there right under the surface, like we're living our everyday life, but those emotions and that grief is just kind of ready to rear its ugly head at any time. And triggers are what kind of opens the gap and sort of lets that grief, come to the front of our brain, the front of our um I don't know how you would say it, but the front of our attention, and kind of take over our thought process at any given time. And sometimes you never know when that's going to happen. And I will say this, if you stuff your grief down and you don't allow yourself time to let the grief out, let the crying out, and like have your moments of where you think of them, and you really kind of have like those crying moments. If you don't allow yourself to have those, um, when you have control, like, you have to decide, okay, I'm gonna spend some moments, crying or thinking about my spouse or things like that. If you don't ever allow that to happen under your own control, and you shove it down and stuff it inside, it's going to come anyway. But when it comes, then it's going to come at a time that you have no control over, and it's just going to hit you like a freight train. And it could be in the middle of, a meeting at work, or it could be in the middle of the grocery store. It could be in the middle of a dentist appointment. That happened to me one time at a dentist appointment. But like, you can control those moments when you have those little crying spells or moments of grief where you just kind of let yourself feel it and filter it through. You can control it and decide, or you can not control it and you can shove it back inside, and it's going to do it whenever it decides. And so it's up to you on how you want to manage that one. Um, let's see. Peg says tools, cars, and some music. Oh, and his pipes and pipe tobacco, probably because of the smells also. Laurie says, if soccer comes on, I have to turn it off. Tom was a huge Man U fan. I kept all his jerseys and sometimes sleep in them. So yeah, JP is a big soccer fan too. So he played soccer in high school. Jane says, husband passed away 4 months ago. I nursed him for 3 years. Yeah, being a caregiver is really tough. And because you're also going through anticipatory grief at that time. So you're trying to deal with your own grief of what's to come, and you're also trying to care for that person who's sick, and they are dealing with their mortality. And it's just a big giant mix of tough emotions. um, let's see. Jane says smells and songs for sure. Chris says Jody from boring small town Iowa. 2-year mark hit a few days ago when my husband passed. So yes, I'm so sorry, Chris. I think that let's see. I remember seeing a message from you somewhere. I don't know if it was I think it was a YouTube thing that I responded to earlier, maybe today, like a YouTube response. Um, let's see. Peg says, oh, Jane, I'm so sorry. Tammy says, shopping is still a huge trigger for me. I get so sad and teary, regardless of whether I'm shopping for groceries, clothes, furniture, every type of shopping. So I'm guessing, Tammy, that maybe y'all shop together. Maybe that was an activity that you did together. And I don't know if it's an issue and it kind of causes you problems, then maybe can online shopping be a replacement for some of those things? Maybe that might be an option for you. I don't know. Jane says, I have my first counseling tomorrow. So Jane, I hope that goes well for you. I found that in the beginning, I went to one counseling session and it sucked because it was this young woman and I knew she had not been through the kind of loss I'd been through. And in my mind, I was like, I'm paying you to pretend like you care about my problems. That's not necessarily true. That's just what I was thinking. And I remember thinking, you cannot possibly know what I feel, what I'm going through. And she was telling me some advice that, like, my mom had always told me since I was a kid. And I was like, I could have called my mom and got that advice for free. So I'm not saying therapy is bad and you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying that therapist was not good for me. And after that, I just did not go again until just probably within the last 6 or 8 months, I started going back. And this time I'm going to a faith-based therapist, and she's actually right next door to our house. But she has also experienced profound loss, and knows, she hasn't lost a spouse, but she actually lost her whole she lost her daughter and 2 grandchildren on a plane crash. And so she has, she's experienced some severe loss. And so just for some reason, I just feel like if she gives me some advice, then I'm going to listen because she's been through it. And so she knows what kind of pain, that it is and how difficult it is to function when you're going through profound grief. Um, so let's see. Janet says, my dad used to wake my sister and me up on Saturday mornings if we slept too long by turning the volume up. I did turn the volume up when it played on the radio. My grandmother used to do that when we'd spend the night at her house. She'd be like, y'all aren't going to sleep all day. You better get up. And she'd be cooking breakfast. So Chris says, grief really hits me working on his honeydew list. I'm trying to learn those husband jobs, but dang, I suck at it. Yeah, you know what, Chris, if you aren't already in our Facebook group, I highly recommend joining because we've had some stories, some success stories of some people in our group that have learned some amazing things that I like. Women come on there and they're like, I learned how to, I don't know, I can't even remember specifics, but like change the, I don't know, change the engine in my lawnmower or like some crazy stuff, like some crazy construction stuff, some crazy electronic stuff, some lawn care tool stuff. I mean, it's amazing what some of our members have taught themselves how to do and actually done it because they had to. And at the end of it all, they're so proud of themselves because they learned how to do something they never would have done and never would have had to do before that. And so it's pretty empowering to know that something that you would never have, thought you could even think about doing, and that you're able to do it by yourself. So it's sad that you had to do it by yourself, but it's still an empowering feeling to know that you were able to do it. So Nancy says, yes, that is true. It comes. My husband has been paralyzed for 4 years today. In church, I could just not stop crying. Yes, so it does. Like I said, you can either decide when those moments, or those moments are going to decide for you. And sometimes they still do, even if you allow yourself time to grieve on purpose. Sometimes you still get those triggering moments where they hit you out of, blindside you out of the blue. But as time goes by, those moments become farther and farther between, and they're not as intense when they do come. Like I even had a moment today in church where things just kind of got to me, and I didn't cry, but I got, a little teary eyed a little bit. And it was just kind of thoughts overwhelming me. And I was kind of thinking about this video that I was going to do. And, just some of those thoughts came to my mind, and memories and realizations. And, they still hit you, even though I'm going on 6 years in a few months. And, you know, it's never going to go away, right? You do get stronger, you do get better at handling it, but you're always going to be in some kind of grief process. Um, so Barb says, my husband died during COVID and everything was shut down. We were not allowed to attend church services. The first couple times of attending after the mandates were lifted was very hard to do. So yes, I totally get that. The church that we attended, it took me a while to be able to go back. And when I did go back a couple of times to those services, I was highly triggered because the sanctuary was where his casket was for the funeral service. And so when I'm sitting there, all I could do was just in my mind see his casket up there at the front. I just cried and cried and cried. And I didn't hear the message. And then my daughter at the time came out of Sunday school, and she was like, Mommy, I don't like this church anymore. It just makes me think of Daddy, and it makes me sad. And for her to be able to even verbalize that, I was like, okay. So we had to find a new church because it just wasn't helping us anymore. It was just keeping us down. So HHJJ says, hello to you all, a widow of 13 months. Don't know why I'm still holding on to the dentures and his medicine bag of many medicines. I know it's strange. It's in a way it's strange, but honestly, it's normal for us widows and widowers to do those strange things. I have a whole video about it, as a matter of fact, like the weird things widows do, or something like weird ways widows grieve, I think it's called. And like, I kept a thing of his deodorant, and I would sniff his deodorant. And as a matter of fact, I still hold on to some of his medicines. I don't even know why. Like he had some medicines that he was taking that I will never take. No one will ever take. They're way expired and nobody needs them, and it's illegal to take them anyway. But like, I don't know why I can't bring myself to like get rid of all of them. And so, maybe someday I will be able to, or maybe I'll get rid of one bottle at a time. I don't know. But so it might be, it might be kind of strange in your thought process, but it's common. Something that commonly happens with widows and widowers. So you're not alone in that one. And Jane says, bless her. And Janet says, hey, HHJJ, we all grieve our own way. I had to empty my husband's medicine cabinet very early. So yeah, see, some of us just have to do it like real quick. They're like, I can't take that anymore. And others are like, I can't let go for some reason. As a matter of fact, um, yesterday I went to my sister's house and I finally gave away Dewey's wheelchair. Like it had been sitting in our house forever and gone through 2 moves. And for some reason I just couldn't get rid of it. But I finally got rid of it because I had a high school friend whose mom needed it for she's going in a nursing home and she needed a wheelchair. And I was like, you know what? I couldn't bring myself to give it to Goodwill, but I knew, like, I grew up with her, and so I knew her mom from the time we were in high school. So I knew it was gonna go to somebody that I knew, somebody that needed it, and somebody that would get good use out of it. And so it made me feel good to know that all this time I've held on to it for whatever reason, and I was able to gift it to her so that she could make use out of it. So I finally got rid of his wheelchair yesterday, over 5.5 years later. Christian says it's almost been a month. I had to move his meds out of sight in the first days. I haven't been able to get rid of anything yet, and that's totally normal. I mean, it's in the first month. You know, if you don't ever haven't gotten rid of anything yet, that's also totally normal. It's really tough to get rid of stuff. Um, and I feel like sometimes we get rid of things in the beginning because we feel like we're supposed to. We feel like people are going to say, "When are you going to get rid of it? When are you going to get rid of it?" And we do it because of other people's expectations, and that's the wrong reason. If getting rid of something is going to make your grief worse, then don't get rid of it. Like, there's no reason why you have to. There's no time limit. You know, it's only for your own self. And so it's not going to change anybody's life except yours. So if it's going to make you feel worse to get rid of the stuff, it's going to make you feel more sad to get rid of it, then don't get rid of it. But keep thinking about it, keep revisiting from time to time and see, are you ready to get rid of it now? Is it time now? Sometimes the time just comes up and all of a sudden your mind flips and you're like, okay, I got to get rid of it right now. So, whatever it is that you feel like would help you, just do it if it helps you in the grieving process. If getting rid of it will help you feel better, then get rid of it. If keeping it makes you feel better, then keep it. But there's no right or wrong way on all that stuff. And so, don't let other people's expectations and opinions sway you, because if it's not going to help you in your grief process, then why are you doing it? You know, to make them feel better, they don't have to live your life. You do. And so don't even talk about it with other people if you feel like you have to answer for it. You don't even have to tell them. They don't have to know what's in your bathroom. They don't have to know what's still in your closet, so just don't talk about it. Um, Jane says, I'm super anxious for tomorrow. I'm worried I'm just going to cry the entire session. And Jane, you know what? If you cry the entire session, then you must need to cry, and that's okay. And I'm sure that the therapist is totally used to that. And if you need to cry the whole session and just get a whole hour's worth of crying out of your system, then that's what you do. And that's okay too. And, it's not about what the therapist says to you. You're there for your own healing, for your own grief journey. And so if that's what you need, then that's what you do. Because I promise you, you're not going to go there every single time and cry the whole hour. You might do it the first time, or you might do the second time, or you might cry some and then talk some. And so it may be a process. And so don't stress about that part. You don't have to stress about what you think is going to happen, because you don't know what's going to happen. And so just let whatever happens and let it come. Release that control that you have, because that's what's causing you anxiety, because you don't know what's going to happen and you're trying to, in your mind, like, think about what's going to happen. And since you don't know, you can't control that. So try to release that control of that, and just kind of go in and say, okay, well, we'll just see what happens, and try to see. Janet says, my husband was a church organist. Haven't been back to church because of the organ music. So I totally get that, Janet. I totally get that. And so you may choose a different church maybe that doesn't play organ music. Our church plays modern music. And so there's not organ music there. Some people don't like the modern music, and that's okay too. So, it's just always some options. Or, maybe online church. Then you can, when the organ music comes on, you can mute it out and then turn it back on and just hear the sermon. So I can imagine, Jane says, I can imagine how hard that is for you. Laurie says, I still have his toothbrush and toothpaste in the drawer. That's cool. That's fine. Maybe it's something you never get rid of. Maybe it's something you just hold on to. What difference is it gonna make in the grand scheme of things if you keep his toothbrush forever? If that's what makes you feel better, then that's fine. Jane says, "I still have his last can of Coke in the fridge. I can't use it." And again, what's it gonna hurt if the Coke stays there forever? Nothing. If it helps you, then keep it in there. But if it continues to trigger you and it's holding you back from being able to move forward, then you got to think about how you might go through that process of letting go. So it's a balancing act. It's like a tug of war, for that. And I did another video once about moving forwards while looking backwards. And so, it's about how do you travel? How do you move forward? How do you travel forward? And you know that the more you travel forward, the farther away you're getting from the time that you were with them. And so, those memories back there that you're leaving behind, it is a tough, tough thing to know that the moving forward means healing, right? It means that supposedly you're getting better, but in order to do that, it does mean that you have to walk farther away from your past. And so it is a tough, tug of war to do. So I did a whole video on that if you want to look for that on the channel. Barb says his shampoo, deodorant, soap are still in the bathroom. I think that's a common thing, like toiletries and stuff, because they're so personal. Stuff that they used every day. Stuff that it was just part of them. It has their smell. It's a personal, has their DNA on it, So it's something very personal. And I think it's real common for people to take a while to get rid of that kind of stuff. Because it also, to get rid of it is another step of accepting that they're truly gone and not ever going to need it anymore. So it's hard to do that. Chris says, I just started cleaning and packing my husband's stuff. It's been 2 years, but he was nearly a hoarder. I've been too overwhelmed to start. A 5-car garage with only one car having enough room to park. Chris, I went through something really, really similar. So my husband I think he just actually was a hoarder. I mean, I probably didn't call him that when he was alive, but looking back on the stuff, I truly think he never threw anything away, and he wouldn't let me throw anything away. And so we had a garage that was just full. It was a 2-car garage, but it was full. No car could fit in there. And you couldn't even see the floor. It was just like stacked up. And in that first year after he died, I had built a house. And so we were getting ready to move. And I did not want to move all of that shit into the new house because I didn't need any of it. And so I had to get one of those big things that they put in your driveway, like I can't remember what it's called, a dumpster. Like I had to get a dumpster and they moved it in and I rented it for like 7 days. And in the first 2 days, I filled it up all the way. And I had not even put a dent in the garage. So I told him, I was like, you got to come get it. It's full. And so I had him come get it. And I rented another one for another 7 days and I filled that one up. And then I think it took three full ones and like another almost full one. I think it took almost 4 of them. And in the process, I was burning a bunch of stuff in the backyard. If it could be burned, if it was wood, or whatever, I was burning it. And as a matter of fact, I was in a neighborhood and I kind of ended up getting a citation for my fire being too big. But anyway, that's another story. But so I feel you, Chris, on that because I've been through that too. And it was just, and it's funny because as I was picking things up and throwing, those were his things, not our things. And things that I knew I would never use again. And as I was picking up boxes and emptying them, I was saying, I called my husband Daddy because the kids called him Daddy. So I just always called him Daddy. So I'm picking up stuff and I'm like, sorry, Daddy. Sorry, Daddy. Sorry, Daddy. And I'm picking up all of his stuff and I'm throwing it away. And I felt really guilty, but I knew it was the only thing I could do. I just did not want to take all of that stuff to the new house. I wanted a fresh start. And so I went through that too. Let's see. Janet says this journey is so hard. So many things come up out of nowhere. Yeah, even now, they come up and hit me, blindside me. Tim says her side of the sinks are still set up as she left it. Reminds me of her when I go in there. Love it. So Tim, the fact that you say that you love it, that is what, by keeping it is what helps you. It helps you feel that connection to her. It makes you feel better. It brings you comfort. For that reason, that's why you should keep it. For other people, going in there and seeing that could be the trigger, could be the thing that makes that pain still raw, it's a reminder that they're not ever going to be there again and things like that, like the closet for me. For that reason, for me, I needed to get rid of those things. And so you see how the same kind of thing holding on to helps somebody's journey, but holds somebody else's journey, hold them back from their journey. So just how everybody's different with their grief. Um, let's see. HHJJ says, before I leave to do errands, I stand near his picture and tell him my agenda for the day before I leave. When I return, I go to his picture again and tell him I'm back now, and I share how my day went. That's really sweet. That's cool. It kind of gives you that little connection. Like it's the same thing that you would have done, when he was alive, and how you would have had those same conversations. So that's pretty neat. Chris says, I wish I could find a widower travel group for middle-aged parents. After I fill up 4 plus dumpsters, I'm going to need it. Laughing at your fire story. It's much funnier than yeah, it's actually a really funny story, but it's too much to go into. Maybe I'll make a whole video about that one day. My sister makes fun of me about it sometimes. So, yeah, it was funny. It's funny now. It was not funny at the time because I almost got arrested about it because of like just fire stuff. But anyway, yeah, Tim says exactly well said. Tony says, piggybacking on Barb's response, I cannot even keep the bathroom door open of the newly renovated bathroom that was completed a few weeks before he passed away. So, like I said, for some people it's healing, for some people it's holding them back. And so it's whatever is right for you. All right. So all of this that we talked about was, triggers for early grief that kind of hangs on. But now there's been a little bit of a change for the grief now that I have, which is, it'll be in June, it will be 6 years. And so believe it or not, I still get triggered. And like I said, it's a little bit different now though. Sometimes the triggers are just, it just brings things to my attention. And so sometimes it'll bring a little tear to my eye, or just make me sit and think and stop and just think about the fact that I'm still in grief. No matter what I'm doing in my life, and how I've moved forward and how my life has changed, I'm still always going to be a widowed person. I know some people take offense to me calling myself widow because, well, you're remarried and you aren't a widow anymore. I know on paper that I'm not. I know that legally my status is no longer widowed. I'm married now, but remarrying did not take away my grief, did not take away my pain, did not bring my husband back from the grave. It did not bring my kids' dad back into their lives. And so those experiences that I have and how it affects my life, not just the primary grief of losing that person, but the secondary grief of losing my whole life and the future the potential that life had that I don't have anymore. My whole life is different now because he's not in it anymore. I also did another video about that, about secondary grief. And when I learned about that, it was really eye-opening. And so if you want to find that video, it just helped me understand a lot of things, and the secondary grief is the one that's the longest lasting, and it's the one that affects you the most. And so, I'm still suffering with that. It still affects me, some days more than others. But, and like I've talked about numbers before, but his basketball number was 33. And so the girls, 2 of my girls play basketball, and, anytime that they are able to pick their number, they always pick number 33 for their number. And so, and when my husband, um, my present husband, JP, we went to go get my new car, which was almost 2 years ago now, and he went to go get the tag for it. He ordered the tag, and he put Leo 33 for my personalized tag on the back. And I didn't even ask him to. He didn't ask me or anything. My nickname is Leo. It's what I go by online. My friends and family all call me Leo. And then he knew that 33 was that special number. So he put that. So that's my vanity tag on my car. It says Leo 33. My daughter has, let's see, I'll have to show you this. I know y'all have probably seen this. This is going to be upside down, right? But this is let's see. This is, I can't get it to show on the camera, right? But this is his hand, right? There we go. Right here. So that's him doing the I love you sign. He could do sign language. Okay. It's hard to see, but those are his initials and his favorite flower, tulip, and his favorite color, blue. And that's actually his hand. It was taken from a picture of his hand. It was done by his best friend that was the best man in our wedding, who owns a tattoo shop. And it's also got the little lump right there of his wedding ring. You can sort of see it on the top there. So anyway, my 20-year-old daughter, she got the same tattoo, but instead of the DB for his initials, she got 33 for their number. And so every time that we go somewhere, it just seems like 33 is always just popping up. And so, for an example, I will show you. I don't know if this might be backwards when I put it on there, right? Let's see. Oh, I think it's okay. So this was the price of the gas when yesterday. This was yesterday. It's the price of gas when I was traveling to my sister's house, and I had to take a picture and circle it, and I sent it to her. 333. Right. So we're either see 33 or 333. And then when I woke up this morning and I checked the weather, that was the temperature was 33. So, it might be coincidence, but it seems like we just see that number, those two numbers everywhere. And I just feel like when we see those numbers, it's just kind of like him saying, "Hey guys, still here." you know? And so I don't know if you would call that a trigger because it doesn't like make me break down into tears, but it does make me stop and just kind of remember and think about him. So maybe a trigger in a good way. Um, Dreams. I've had some dreams, that have been triggers. I've shared some of those in my last video. Songs still trigger me. And on our Facebook group, as a matter of fact, I think it was last week, somebody posted a link to the When I Said I Do, which is a country song by Clint Black and his wife. And they said, "Yeah, I play this." I think that he said, "I play it every day. It makes me think of my wife." I don't remember the significance of the song, if it's just a song that makes him think about it or if it was something from something, but that was our wedding song. So when he posted it, I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's my wedding song." And so when I hear that song, it doesn't come in on often, but it's still on my playlist. So it kind of brings me back to that memory. And then a few things that have happened to me recently in the past couple weeks. And it's been kind of eye-opening. Like, I've heard a lot of stories of people that I have known that I did not know were going through similar grief journeys. And it made me realize that more people out there that are going through these journeys, and we don't even know. Like, we walk through life and we think we're the only widow out there. I mean, we know that we're not, but like you walk through your job or you go through church or you go through the grocery store or whatever, and you feel like that you're the only person that's widowed or that's going through that grief. But you don't know those people. You don't know what kind of pain they've been through. And I think there's a lot more people that have experienced loss than we realize. So just in conversation in the last 2 weeks, I have found out that one person that I work with is a widower, sorry, lost his wife and has remarried. And I was like, wow, I did not know that about him. And I don't want to get into specifics about who they are because I don't want to really, not that you would know who they are, but I just don't want to, I don't want to invade their privacy. But let's just say somebody I work with. Another person that I work with was telling a story about how several years ago they had struggled for one of the school years because their son got cancer and they were having to, trying to work and try to deal with helping their son through the illness and things. And I felt like it was callous of me. She had just given me the information just in conversation. She did not follow up with if he survived or if he died. And I felt like it would have been callous of me to say, well, did he die? And so I felt like if she wanted me to know, she would have, she would have led with that, or she would have finished the story with that if she wanted me to know. And maybe he did die and she didn't want us to talk about it. Or maybe he survived and she didn't even think to say, oh, by the way, he lived. Regardless, I felt like if she wanted me to know, she would have told me. And so I did not ask. So I don't know if he lived or died. And I don't know how old he was or is. She just said my son. But I thought, wow, I went through that too as a teacher, because this woman was a teacher. I went through it as a teacher with my husband, going through chemotherapy, trying to work, trying to be a mom, trying to, be with my husband during his illness. And so I thought, wow, this is just another person who's gone through a similar, type of struggle. And then I went to a training on Friday and I saw this person that I thought I recognized, and I recognized her from college. Like, I had not seen her since I was in college, and she was a dancer in the marching band with me. And even then I didn't know her name. Like, I recognized her. We marched together, but I wasn't friends with her. So I just knew her by face. But I was like, I know this is really weird, but did you go to UGA? Were you in the marching band? Were you on the dance team? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, "I was a flag person. We marched together. We're in that little poster together." So anyway, we're just kind of catching up and stuff. And she's showing me pictures of people, "Do you remember her? Do you remember her? Do you remember her?" She's showing me pictures of people that she still keeps in touch with. And she said, "Do you remember Melissa?" And I said, "Yeah, she actually, I knew her from some other things." And she said, "Yeah, she's having a really tough year because she lost her husband this year." And so I thought, "Oh, okay, well," and she's probably a couple years older than me, but and so I could hear in her voice that she, felt really bad for her and was saying, when she lost her husband, so she's having a rough time. And then um the last thing that I wanted to share is somebody else that I work with. I'm Facebook friends with her, but I saw a post on her Facebook and it was some pictures, and it was her. She's not married. She lives with her boyfriend and she doesn't have any kids. So she's young. But anyway, her dog that she'd had for 12 or 13 years was sick and was having kidney failure and some seizures and stuff. And so she hired a professional photographer to come in and take some pictures of her and her family and her with her dog, and before they had to put the dog down. And I thought, okay, that's sweet. That's sweet. So then she ended up having to put her dog down the next night. And so I felt bad for her because she was posting on Facebook, "Oh, my heart's broken. I'm really sad," and things like that. So I saw her the next day at work and she's just sitting in a chair, just sitting silently. And one of our other coworkers said, "Are you okay?" She's like, "No, I'm not. I'm not okay." And so she's I don't mean to laugh, but she's talking about, because I'm not laughing at her. I'm just, sometimes I chuckle inappropriately. But anyway, she's telling us about how sad she is about her dog, and that she'd had to have it put to sleep, and she's crying. She's very, like, she almost had to go home. She was overcome with grief. And so at first I thought, well, I feel really bad for her because her losing her dog was the worst grief she's ever experienced because she's so young. She's not old enough to lost her parents. She doesn't have any kids. She haven't lost a spouse. She hasn't lost a sibling. Like, she's never lost a person close enough to her, because her losing her dog is like the saddest she's ever been in her life. And I felt bad for her because I thought, girl, you don't even know, like, if this is, you know, anyway, but her pain is real. Like, her grief is real. Her feelings are valid. And I felt bad for her, but then she just kept going on and on and on. Like, she was getting mad at people because they were not asking her how she was doing. And then she starts saying things like, "I don't even think I want to get married to my boyfriend because if I can't handle my dog dying, then I can't even handle, losing a husband." She's like, "And now I used to think I wanted kids, but now I don't think I'll be able to have kids, because what if something happens to my kid and they die and I can't, like, if I'm feeling this sad about my dog, I don't think I can handle having kids or getting married." And I thought, like, she's speaking from her pain at that point, right? She's in the throes of grief. She's talking about, like, changing her whole life and never having happiness, of the kind of happiness that we had with a spouse and children, and the joy, like, never having those relationships because she can't handle the pain of losing them if that ever happens. I kind of get that, when you're in the middle of that sadness. But it was almost, after a while, she kept going on and on about it. And at that point, it triggered me. Like, it triggered me at that moment that I felt like turning around and saying to her, "Will you please shut up about your dog?" And I know that's not the right thing to do. Like, that would have been totally inappropriate and not validating her pain and her grief. But after a while, I was like, I don't know if she knows that I'm widowed or not, because I'm new to this school and I've only known her, but I feel like if we're friends on Facebook, she probably knows. So two scenarios. If she knows that I'm widowed and she keeps going on and on about how sad she is about losing her dog, and then I would kind of think that's pretty insensitive, to be talking about how bad you're hurting and not, like, not even considering the fact that this woman over here lost her husband and I'm sitting here talking about my dog. Like, talk about it and then move on. But then I thought, if she doesn't know that I'm widowed, then obviously she's just speaking from her own place and she's not thinking about me or anybody else or whatever. But after a while, I was like, I'm going to say something to her. I'm going to be like, "You know what? You think it's hard to lose a dog? Try losing a husband." And then come back and talk about it. you know, but I didn't do that, and that would have been mean to do and inappropriate to do. I'm just telling you, these are the thoughts that went through my head. And I started feeling angry and I started feeling, I guess, triggered. You know what I mean? And I finally thought, you know what? I'm gonna have to get up and go. I'm gonna have to get up and walk out of this room because I cannot sit here and listen to this girl talk and cry and complain and cry about how heartbroken she is, when she has no idea what that, our kind of pain is. And so, I thought, okay, if she doesn't stop, I'm either going to say something to her that's probably inappropriate, or I'm going to have to get up and leave. And then, of course, everybody's going to be like, what's wrong with her? And so I felt like when people, like, has anybody ever come up and said, you know what? I know what you're going through. I know exactly how you feel because, when my cousin died when I was 10, like, or when my gerbil died when I was a kid, and I just thought I wanted to kill myself, or whatever. Like, I don't know if y'all have ever, when somebody equates their pain to yours because of some other really small in comparison, insignificant, or when I first started dating, I'd have people that say, "Yeah, I know what you're going through because when my wife divorced me, it almost killed me." And I'm like, "You're really trying to equate the death of my husband to your divorce?" And those dates never went anywhere else. That would always been the last date. But like, so the point is that a little bit of her grief, I could handle and kind of be empathetic to and sympathetic with or whatever. But after a while, it just kind of seemed like it was just excessive. And it really started to bother me to the point where I was like, I can't take this anymore. Like, this is a little too much, like, rein it in, kid. You know what I mean? Because as you grow older and experience some of those other losses, like, whew, maybe this is good practice for you. But anyway, and maybe it bothered me more than it should, but, it just really, like, I went home and I had to tell JP about it, and I was like, "This woman, oh my gosh." And so I'm sitting here mad at her and she doesn't even know, and probably not for good reason, because it wasn't a her issue, it was a me issue. It was an issue within me on my grief journey, why it bothered me. She wasn't trying to hurt my feelings. She wasn't trying to be insignificant in what's the word I'm trying to think of? Insensitive. She wasn't trying to be insensitive to me. She was hurting and she was expressing her pain and she was wanting some stroking and some bless your heart and some sympathy, from people. Rightly so, but just the fact that I was sitting here listening to it and it went on and on and on just really started to bother me. And so, and even when I heard about the woman, who had lost her husband that this past year, I started to go through a new type of feeling and that I hadn't experienced before. And what it was is that, like, I feel like almost 6 years in, I feel like that I'm losing for a lack of a better term, my widow card. Like, I'm losing, I'm not out there fishing for sympathy. I don't want that. You know what I mean? But, like, I'm still going through pain. I'm still going through, like, grief is still affecting me in a big way, and it always will. But it almost seems like I hesitate for people that I know that don't know I'm widowed, because that I've met since Dewey died. I've met in the last couple years. Sometimes I wonder, should I even bring it up? Because if I bring it up, is that me, like, fishing for sympathy? Is that me saying, "Well, my husband died too," like, I'm a widow too. Like, I'm having a rough time too. What about me? "Oh, you think, yeah, she's hurting, but you know what? I am too." And so, and then I start feeling guilty. I feel like I'm childish or something, because I'm like, do I really need that vindication? Do I really need to tell that person? Because that person's just going to be like, oh, they're going to feel weird. They're gonna feel awkward, they're not gonna know what to say, and then they might even treat me differently from then on, because they're like, "Oh, that's that woman," and they might even say, "What is the point of her even saying that at this point?" Because people who've not lost would think, "What's the point of even telling me after 6 years? Like, it's been 6 years and she's still, talking about it?" A person who hadn't lost a spouse would probably think that, like, "Okay, it's time to get over it, lady." But if you're widowed, that I'm doing the best I can, and I'm not wallowing in my grief every single day. Like, it's not crippling me, but it's never going to go away. And at what point, do I not even mention it anymore? Because it is still a part of it's still a part of me, And so, do I need that person's validation? Do I need that person's sympathy? Do I need that person to know that about me? Maybe not. Maybe not. I don't know. I'm confused about that. I'm not sure how I should feel. I'm not sure how I should act or what I should do or what I should say. Anybody who's been out there for a long time widowed, do you still bring it up to people who wouldn't otherwise know? Or you just let them find out in the course of, maybe somebody else telling them? Do you just let them find out if they find out, and if not, you don't bring it up? I'm not sure. It's this new territory for me, so I don't really know. I don't know how to handle that one. So, maybe y'all can have, some ideas for me or some whatever. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at some of the chats because it's been an hour now. I'm going to look at some chats, and then I'm going to see if anybody, if you've, what triggers you, what kind of things trigger you in the beginning or farther on out. Put it in the underneath the video. If you're watching the replay, just put it in the comments. If you're watching right now, put it in the chat. But what kind of things trigger you? And we'll see if we can talk about it. And then the only other thing on my little list that I didn't mention was like I had a couple of comments recently on one of my YouTube videos from somebody, and she actually said, well, it's easy for you to say because you've replaced your husband already. And, and I'll never replace mine, and I'll never, be in that kind of situation or whatever. And I thought, at first I got offended by somebody saying that, because I was like, actually, it's not easy for me to say, and I'm not, easily handling all of this. No, it's not. It's not easy. Secondly, I have not replaced my husband. I didn't just get a new one. It's not like that, and it's not ever like that. Like, each person is his own person, and JP does not, he's more to me than a replacement of Dewey. He's his own person, and this is a totally separate marriage. It's a totally different part of my life. So my first thoughts, and I did respond, a little bit with that, not really in a mean way, but like I got offended. And then I think about it a little bit and think, okay, so this person who's reading this, she's obviously widowed. So she's coming from a place of pain. She's not, it's not that she's mad at me, and it's not that she probably even really thinks that. It's that all she's thinking about is how hurt she is right now, and how she can't relate to me moving forward. She can't relate to the happiness that I might feel with my new husband and my new life and the things that I've done. She can't relate to that because she can't imagine herself being in that position. Probably because she's either in fresh grief or she's in complicated grief, and she's stuck in the anger phase because she obviously was very angry. And so none of those things have to do with me. So I really don't feel like she was feeling a certain way about me. It's that she was feeling a certain way about herself, and she was projecting that out. And so, and I felt bad for her, because I felt like I've been there, I know how that feels. And obviously she's in the anger phase, and she's in that place where you feel like everybody else is happy and you're the only person that feels like you are, and nobody else could ever understand. I'm the saddest person in the world, and there's nothing that can trump my feelings right now. I feel like that's probably where she was. And I felt bad for her, and I prayed because I hoped that she was in fresh grief, because that's a normal feeling. If she's not in fresh grief and she's years out and she's still feeling that way, she probably needs some professional help in some way, because she seemed like she would be stuck in that situation. I don't know her. I don't know anything about her. That's just an assumption on my part, and I could be wrong. Anyway, so that's just what I wanted to talk about. Now I'm going to go through the last few chats, and then we're going to wrap it up for the day. So let's see where I left off. After 10 years, Doris says, after 10 years, I finally threw away his shaving kit. And you know what? 10 years. Okay. Well, there you go. Sometimes you just have to wait until it just feels right. Another thing that a lot of people think about is like, when do you take your wedding ring off, if ever? Some people, when do you take it off? When do you switch it over to your right hand? Do you switch it? Do you put it on a necklace? Do you keep it on? Like, everybody has their own way of doing it. Some people are like, I will never take it off. I will always feel married to my spouse, and that's where it's going to stay forever. Okay, that's fine. And you might always feel that way, or you might feel that way now. If that's how you feel now, that's okay, and keep it on. But you might not always feel that way, and that's okay too. I felt like I needed to take it off really quick because it was almost like I had to, it's almost like flipping the bird to the world saying, see this? I put it on my right hand almost immediately. And I was like, I'm widowed now. See? It was like a shove in everybody's face. Not that people even paid that much attention. You know what I mean? But I just felt like it was my little badge of grief, like, yep, he died. And I put it on my right hand. And then my left hand felt naked. And so I got a widow's ring and I put it there in its place. And I did a lot of different things on that one. It was a progression of things as I progressed and my grief went to different places, then different things happened with those rings. And I feel like that was okay. Laurie said I had to check the single box on my tax return this year, and that triggered a lot of tears. Yeah, filling out paperwork seems to be like a big trigger for people, because sometimes the box doesn't even say widowed. And you're like, well, where's widowed? My status is not on here. And sometimes even when I have to check the box and I see widowed and I see married and I have to check married, and it's not that I'm ashamed that I'm married, but it's almost like I have to leave the widowed box alone, even though in my heart I'm like, but I want to check that one too. I know that legally, I'm not supposed to, but like, it's almost like I have to leave that part off. It's hard to explain, but I get how that can be triggering. Tim says I'm retiring soon. I'm afraid it will give me more time to think. I need to get a hobby or volunteer. Yeah, I totally get that. Get a hobby. Get involved in your church. Get a part-time job. Volunteer somewhere. Go out and do something to keep you busy. You definitely want to do that because sitting around thinking too much can be not a good thing. Chris says, I can relate as I randomly talk to my spouse too. Sometimes cry to him or tell him how angry I am at him or complain about the huge mess his kids constantly make. My boys say I'm insane. So I totally relate to that. Yes, my kids are slobs too, and they are still slobs even this time out. And so yes, I totally get that. For a long time, I kept his phone and I would text him. I would text him. At first, I texted him like every week, and then I would text him like every month. And then I would text him when I was really, really struggling, like especially with the kids. I'd be like, hey, I really need some help right now. The kids are struggling. They miss you so much, and I don't know what to do. And it was kind of almost like in place of praying. And it was probably misplaced. Like I probably should have been praying, but instead I felt like I had that connection. I was still sending my message out to him somehow. So if you can hear yelling in the background, it's my son in his room over there. He's playing video games. And then HHJJ says, Chris, I do understand. Many times I cry as I talk to him too. Laurie Archer says, I feel the same way when I see 42. That was Tom's number, and I see it everywhere. It makes me smile every time. I know it's him. Dewey was 42 when he died. So, yeah. Another number for us is 17, which is weird because we had our 17th wedding anniversary a week before he died. We were married 17 years. It was in the year 2017. He died on June 17th. And when I met JP, his wife had also died on the 17th of that month. Not the same month, but it was on the 17th. And he was married for 34 years, which is 17 times 2. So, and we got engaged on August 17th. So there's a lot of 17s in our mix as well. Kelly Sexton says, lost my husband of 36 years unexpectedly 3 months ago. The waves of tears every day is hard. I wish I had a sign or a dream to know he is at peace. I miss him so much. Sometimes, it takes a while before we dream about them. Some people say they never dream about their spouse, and some people dream about them a lot. So, I did a video probably a month or two ago about dreams. So you might want to look for that one. Barb says a friend actually said she knew what I was going through because her dog died. You just want to punch people like that. I mean, really, I was dumbfounded by that remark, but at the same time, I felt sorry for her. And yeah, it's like, first of all, look at him and think, are you an idiot? Like, even if you kind of think, yeah, I mean, I felt grief too, but for you to actually say it, like it just seems like it would take a lot of stupidity or a lot of insensitivity for somebody to actually say something like that. Like, don't you know that's not the same? I worked with a lady one time when I was building my house. It was like a year after Dewey died, and I was building my house. And I told her, I said, "Yeah, I've been real busy." It was a teacher friend of mine. I said, "Been real busy. I've been picking out, paint colors for the walls and the cabinets, and floor colors and carpet colors and stuff like that." And she was like, "Yeah, but think of this. At least you don't have to worry about having a husband to fight over the colors with." And I was like, yeah." And what I wanted to say is, "Yep, thank God he's dead, so I don't have to fight over paint colors." Like, because basically that's what she was saying. I didn't say that to her, but I thought, "Come on, lady, you're a teacher. Do you not realize that that was just stupid for you to say?" And I just had to walk away. And she was a sweet lady. I mean, she was a little clueless, I guess. But I still to this day think, did you? I mean, and then I wonder after she said it in her mind, did she say, "Oh shit, I should not have said that. That was probably dumb." I mean, I hope that she actually in her mind realized, because if she didn't, that's just like a clueless person right there. I don't know. Tim says, or when you hear people complain that their spouse did something trivial, like left dirty clothes on the floor, you want to turn around and say, "At least you still have them." Exactly. Exactly. "Oh, my husband, blah, 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 blah." And you're like, well, at least you have a husband to complain about. Or when people say, "Well, I'm a hunting widow now, or I'm a fishing widow now, or I'm a football widow now because the season starts and they're going to be, they're gone a lot or whatever, and they're not going to see them." And I'm like, well, this is really probably mean, but whenever I see that online and stuff, they'll say, "Well, I'm a football widow now." And I just respond with, "Well, I'm a real widow." So be thankful you're not, or something. And they usually don't say anything after that. It shuts them up. But it's insensitive for people to say that kind of thing. Um, let's see. Janet says, "Son fixing mailbox. He cut his leg. He had to take to urgent care. Last time had to get stitches was 37 years ago when his dad had to take him to the ER for stitches. A trigger for sure." So yeah, I totally get that. So those are kind of like isolated memories that come pouring back in because of a similar memory. So yeah, that totally makes sense. Barb says, "I told my son he could use my wedding bands for his future wife. Whenever I lost my place, whenever that happens, hopefully by that time I will be all right with it." So that's a good way to keep it in the family, to keep it going. When Dewey died and I came back that same day to see him, I don't know why, but I felt this like this huge piece of anxiety that I thought somebody was going to take his wedding ring. And he even told me, "Do not bury me with my wedding ring. Do not bury me with that. Let it go. Let it be useful to someone, but don't bury me with that piece of jewelry." And so it was like the first thing I did when I saw him after he died was to take that wedding ring off his finger, and just keep it, because I really thought his mom was going to steal it, but I'm kind of surprised she didn't, because she was alone with the body for several hours, and that's a story in itself. I'm kind of surprised she didn't take it then, but she didn't. Um, Tony says, "Sadly, some people say stupid and inappropriate things when looking from the outside when people have dealt with the loss of a spouse." Yeah, I think it's that they want to say something because they feel bad, and they're like, "God, I need to say something to make them feel better. Need to say something." And so they don't know what to say, so they end up saying something dumb. And then it just, and you start thinking you should have just said nothing. But saying nothing, seems mean too. So we need to normalize grief so that we can talk about it without it being such a taboo topic. So people can just say, "You know what? I bet that's really tough for you." She should have said, "I bet that's really tough for you to pick all that stuff out without having your husband there to pick it out with you. I bet you miss him." Like, she could have just said that, but, probably didn't think about that. And it's almost like people are afraid to say something about your spouse as if they might remind you that they died. Like, "Don't worry, you're not going to remind me. I didn't forget." Like bringing up their memory is not going to trigger me just because you said their name, because I think about them all the time. So don't worry. As a matter of fact, I think it would be nice if somebody said, "You know what? I thought about Dewey the other day. I remembered this one time when we blah, 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 and I have a memory. I just want to share it with you. It just made me laugh." It would be so nice to have somebody come and share a memory like that with me, and it would just make me laugh. But people are scared to do that because they're like, "Oh, I don't want to mention that because I don't want to trigger them. What if they start crying and I don't know what to say?" But you know what? People could do that and it would be okay. And so, but I don't think they think it would be okay. So Teresa said, music and places I go definitely triggers. Yep. Janet says, the journey is hard and I feel never ending, easier, but always there. Barb says, like we need reminding. Exactly. If you haven't lost somebody, you might think, oh, I don't want to remind them, but you know, trust me, you're not going to remind us about something that we otherwise would have forgotten. And I saw this picture too. This is something I'm going to put on our phone. I saw this on Facebook. I'm probably going to post it on the group, but I'm going to turn it around and show. And it says, I'll show you the picture in a minute. It says, people tend to believe that grief shrinks over time. What really happens is that we grow around our grief. So if you see, like, this is on the top is what people think, that, it starts off big and our jar is the same size and the grief just gets smaller and smaller. But really what happens is, like, on the bottom, the grief is the same size. Like, that ball is the same size. It's just our jar gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So I thought that was very appropriate. And I'll probably post that on our group. But it's kind of like in the gym. You go to the gym and you try to pick up this really, really heavy weight when you first start going. You can't pick it up because it's too heavy. And then you start working out and you get stronger. And eventually, maybe you can pick up the weight, but it's really hard, but you can do it. Then you go and you get better and stronger and stronger. And eventually you can pick up those weights easily and they don't feel so heavy. The weight is the same. It's the same weight. It weighs the same amount as it has the whole time, but you got stronger and you are more able to handle the weight, the same weight that it was, but now you can lift it more easily. I feel like that's what grief is. The grief is the same. It's the same. The missing is the same. The loss is the same. But as you go through life, you get more and more able to deal with the grief in your life. And so because of that, it does not affect you as acutely as it does in the beginning. So Janet says it's always there. Thumbs up. And Madeline says, I strongly feel that same way. I want friends and family to talk about him. LaDonna says, even as a widow, I have said stupid things that I just couldn't believe came out of my mouth to a good friend who was a recent widow. I felt immediately so sorry. Well, so I guess it even happens to us. But at least, I feel like even if that happened, at least come back and say, you know what? I'm sorry. I should not have said that. I was probably insensitive. To admit your mistake is okay too, because that lets them know that, oh, I realize that was dumb. Too late for me to take it back, but at least I'm going to acknowledge. I said something to a student the other day. This has nothing to do with grief, but I said something to a student. I was kind of picking at him, just kind of teasing him a little bit. But as soon as I said it, the look on his face was like a mixture of hurt and mad. And I realized that what I had said kind of hurt his feelings, even though I was kind of picking at him and joking or whatever. And then as soon as I said it, I was like, oh, I probably shouldn't have said that. That was probably picking a little bit too much at him, So I just went over and got down on his level. I said, you know what, buddy, I probably shouldn't have said that. That was not very nice of me. I said, I was saying it as a joke to try to pick on you, but I realized that was just too, I probably should not have said that. And I wish I hadn't, and I apologize. Are we still okay? And he was like, yeah. And so he forgave me for it, like I did hurt his feelings, but I acknowledged it and I apologized for it. And later on that day when he was leaving to go on the bus, he called my name across the cafeteria on his way out because I wasn't looking at him, and said, Miss Donnell, Miss Donnell. He said, I'm going. And he said, I love you. And I was like, wow. And this is a tough kid. This is a kid that's like kids don't mess with him because he's tough. But I was like, what kid is going to say that in the middle of the high school, to say that and say, like, most kids don't even acknowledge me in the hallway because they're embarrassed. They don't want their teacher to say, if they wave at me, I'll wave at them. But if I see them and they don't wave, I don't wave out because it embarrasses them. And so for him to say that, I feel like that was his way of saying, we're still okay. I care about you. And so I thought that was really sweet. He's one of my favorite kids anyway, but even though we're not supposed to have favorites. So, Stitching Mimi says, oh, Stitching Mimi, that's such a good name. I love to sew and to crochet, and my grandma name is Mimi too. So 18 months, and I feel like my family acts like he never was. And that hurts more to me, and I always have to be happy. 47 years, hard to walk away from. It makes my world even smaller. So I get it. People who aren't as close, who did not lose their spouse, they lost him in a different way. They're like, okay, time to go back to my normal life now. And they wonder why we can't just get over it. Like, okay, it's time for you to It's time for you to stop being sad and stop crying and get on with your life. And like, let's act normal now. Time to, that's what they think. That's what they expect from us. They need that from us. They need us to be better because it makes them feel awkward and whatever when they see that we're still hurting and grieving because they don't know how to help us. So they need us to be okay so that they'll, know how to act around us, if that makes any sense. So Janet says, I love your analogy. Chris says, my mother-in-law, if she hadn't died 6 months prior, would have taken his ring too. His brother walked in without permission and took possessions my husband inherited. My in-laws equal worst ever. Yeah, Chris, you need to watch some of my other videos because, yeah, my mother-in-law, I don't even call her my mother-in-law anymore. I just call her my kid's grandmother. And she's a piece of work. If you know anything, if y'all been around and you hear me say Momo, I got some Momo stories. She is, even now we've had some issues. Just in the past several weeks, we've had some, good Lord. I'm not even going to talk about it right now. Tim says, okay, no guys today on the chat. Did you run them off? We usually don't have that many guys on our chat. And so, and I thought that Chris was a guy, but I think it might be a woman who's either has the name of Chris or she's using her husband's. Because I thought Chris Harris was a guy too, but from the chat, it seems like Chris is a woman. So, Tim, it looks like you're going to have to represent for the guys this time. So, we usually don't have a whole lot of men, but, sometimes we have a few coming in. And then usually Jonice is on here, but I don't see her today. This is one of the first ones that she's missed. So, I miss seeing her. I think she lives in France. She almost always gets to our lives. So she must be touring today or something, doing a, oh, basketball is on. March Madness. Yep. Yep. So we're basketball widows, right? So that's probably what it is. So Chris says, yes, I'm using my husband used to account. I'm female. I kind of figured that either that or your nickname was for like Christina or something like that. But yeah, we have a lot of that too. We have some that have like a combo Facebook account or they still use their husband's account or whatever. And, so I kind of, usually I can read between the lines and get that. So anyway, okay. All right. Well, thank you for sharing all of your stories with me today. We had a lot of good chats in the chat session. If you're watching this on the replay, feel free to put anything that you want to share with us for triggering and things like that in the comment section. Also, check out the links down below. There's a link for the Facebook group. There's a link for the pivot course. A couple of the other links. I'm still working on moving my website over to a new thing. It's probably not going to happen till summer. So if you go to the website, onehappywidow.com, and it looks like it's down, it is, because I just haven't had time to mess with it. So maybe summertime we'll be able to get it back up and running. So don't panic. Anyway, so thank you for joining me today. Really good chat. I got some other ideas for some other new videos too, so I'll be trying to pull those up. Hopefully I'll be able to spend some time editing the other videos that I've made a couple weeks ago, so it'll seem like it's backwards in order, but I'll try to get those up. By the way, we passed 10,000. This past weekend, we passed 10,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel, so woo-hoo, spread the word. Let's keep it going. So one day I might get one of those little plaques, those little silver gold plaques or whatever that says 100,000, but that's going to be a while because we've been here for 2 years and it took me 2 years to get to 10,000. So, but you know what? You never know. Spread the word. Send all your friends and family here. Even if they're not widowed, they can learn some things about how to help widowed people. All right. We can help them to help us. So, anyway, yes. So spread the word, tell all the people that you know, and thank you for coming. We'll see y'all next time. Bye.